GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network. You're listening to the Better Live Than Dead podcast on the Gear Radio Network.
And with that, we welcome you to the Better Live Than Dead podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 165.
165. That's 165 podcasts that you people have listened to me repeat the number.
I'm not sure if it's that many podcasts you've been repeating the number, but you've been doing it a lot lately, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
This is the NFL Conference Playoffcast. We continue our series of NFL playoff podcasts here. You can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, Apple Podcasts, Bullhorn, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, the Radio.com app, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you can listen to podcasts. Excuse me. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD, and joining me, as always, on the IndyCard Media Hotline, the man himself, Mr. Perez, at MRLG Perez.
What's up, peoples? How y'all doing out there? Ryan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
You know what? I'm not doing too bad, man. Thank you very much.
It's a great time to be talking football, baseball, some hockey, UFC, and guess what? We got it all here. And we even got some breaking news, which is going to start off our three big things here, brought to you by FortunePhoto.com. Our first of the three big things this week, around the world of sports. Breaking news right off the cuff. New York Giants quarterback Eli Manning has announced his retirement from football. In, let's see here, 236 regular season games, Manning was 117 and 117, 57,023 yards, 366 touchdowns, and 244 interceptions. He has 2 Super Bowl rings, both against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Lewis, we know Eli Manning is going to be a Hall of Famer. I feel weird about that because I don't feel like Eli Manning was ever like the greatest quarterback. I mean, in his last, let's put it this way. I know he's 117 and 117, but to put it this way, since 2012, when they went 9-7, they only had a winning season once. So 2013, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2019, the Giants had a losing record with Eli Manning under center. Not good. But again, Eli Manning is probably going to the Hall of Fame.
You know, the only reason Eli Manning is going to get into the Hall is because of those 2 Super Bowl rings. If you take those 2 Super Bowl rings away from him, he's a subpar quarterback. Not subpar. He's a serviceable quarterback that just happened to have a couple really good teams when he got those 2 rings. And let's be honest, to me, those 2 Super Bowls were important because you beat the Patriots. And I appreciate anytime anyone beats the Patriots. However, he's not as good as his brother was. His brother deserves to be in the Hall. Maybe. I would have put Eli in just based on his record, 117. That's not a good record. It's not a terrible record. I've seen worse, but it's not a great one. So yeah, he's going to get in the Hall because of those 2 Super Bowl rings. When you take those away, he's not going anywhere near the Hall unless he's buying the ticket.
And I'm looking right now at the Pro Football Hall of Fame inductees. I'm trying to see if I can get them by position. There we go. So looking at statistics, I don't know if I can rank them. I don't know if the win-loss record, I don't think it shows up here. So he falls in line with most of the stuff. So like I said, he'll be there for sure. But I'm pretty sure, if I feel like I remember I heard this somewhere. I'm looking at the stat right now. Joe Namath was 62, 63, and 4 in his career. I think Eli Manning may have one of the worst records as a starting quarterback. I have to verify that. But looking at quarterbacks with multiple Super Bowl starts and victories, Brady has 6, Elway 2, Bradshaw 4, Montana 4, Staubach 2, Peyton Manning 2, Troy Aikman 3, Bob Greasy 2. He's in the Hall of Fame. I think the only quarterbacks right now who have 2+ wins in the Super Bowl that aren't in the Hall of Fame: Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Jim Plunkett, and Tom Brady. Active Brady, Roethlisberger, not Manning anymore, but Jim Plunkett, I think, is the only one who won't go because his career stats were only at 25,000 passing yards.
That's not a lot.
No, even in his day, it wasn't a lot. But
let's be honest. I don't even know if Namath deserves to be there.
I think Joe Namath is in because of his guarantee and because he was such a polarizing star in his day.
Absolutely.
You know, he was the guy who came up and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm the man. Here's my peeper. I'm going to drop it on a table, and we're going to win."
And he did.
He did. Good for him.
Right. But yeah, I mean, some people may say that's heresy, football heresy for me to say that. But I mean, yeah, he's not in if he doesn't get that Super Bowl win.
I mean, Eli Manning will right now. He would rank third among Hall of Fame quarterbacks with passing yards, touchdowns. He would be up there. He's got the stats, like I said, but I don't think he was that great of a quarterback, and maybe that's just because it's my opinion and it's irrelevant. But either way, Eli Manning, rest in peace, Manning face.
He also probably played longer than some of those quarterbacks too.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Another breaking news story we just got a couple minutes ago: a warrant for Antonio Brown's arrest has been posted. He's wanted for robbery and battery, so things are going swell in the world of Antonio Brown.
What is wrong with this dude?
I don't honestly know.
They need to get him some help.
Sorry, I took a swig of my water. I don't disagree. There definitely needs to be something, and maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back because, I mean, I don't understand. I just don't understand.
Like, who did he assault and who did he rob?
A gentleman who was driving a moving truck. Apparently, I'm not 100% sure. The story's
associated with the arrest from yesterday.
Yes, sir. They couldn't get to him because he locked himself in his house, apparently. But again, this is a developing story. But I at least wanted to throw it in the podcast here.
Man, it's just been one thing after another with this guy.
Hey, speaking about one thing after another, we finally got some shoes dropping in the baseball world.
Yes, we did.
The Red Sox, shortly after last week's podcast, agreed to mutually part ways with manager Alex Cora. The New York Mets, days later, agreed to mutually part ways with manager Carlos Beltran. Minnesota, on a completely different note, Minnesota, the Twins signed third baseman Josh Donaldson to a 4-year, $92 million deal.
That's a lot of money.
Steamer projected, that's from Fangraphs. Next season, he's projected a .267 batting average, 36 homers, and 100 RBIs. Now, mind you, Lewis, Major League Baseball's record was set last season by the Minnesota Twins. They hit 307 home runs. I have to ask you, but I think I know the answer here. Over or under next season for Minnesota, 307 home runs?
You know what? I'm about to say under. You know, the Yankees have set the record literally the season before. When these guys come out and they break the record, you know, there was that huge rumor that the regular season that the balls were juiced. And then if you go into the playoffs and watch what happens during the playoffs, they said the balls were completely different and the home run capacity went down a little bit. So if the balls are anything like they were last season during the regular season, then maybe it's a possibility you could break 370 home runs. I'm sorry, 307. But if they're regular, I'm going to go under that.
That's fair. I mean, it's going to be hard to redo that season that they had, but everyone's coming back, and then they add one of the most prolific home run hitters we have seen in baseball in recent time. So, again, absolutely fantastic. Not upset about it. I think Josh Donaldson to the Twins is a great move. Colorado, the Rockies' third baseman Nolan Arenado is upset after team's inactivity this offseason following their disappointing 71-91 season. Arenado accused the team of, quote, a lot of disrespect from people there that I don't want to be a part of. Arenado has been the center of trade talks this offseason 1 year after signing an 8-year, $260 million contract extension. Now, Lewis, in 2019, Arenado was hit 315, 41 home runs, and 118 RBIs with a .962 OPS, which ranked 9th best in Major League Baseball. Now, here's the thing. He plays at Coors Field. That's his home stadium. So he spends 81 games a season at Coors. A lot of people have said that that certainly bloats your numbers, and his career stats don't lie. He's still a fantastic player on the road, but at home, he's batted in 515 games at home, 324 batting average, 129 homers, 446 RBIs with a 995 OPS. In one more career game on the road, that's 516 games. He's a 265 average. 98 homers, 299 RBIs with a 799 OPS. So maybe a little bit of buyer beware here, but it certainly is something to look at that Nolan Arenado wants out of Colorado.
No, it's definitely something to be looked at. I mean, the average is pretty good. You know, his stats are not bad. But that's a lot of money to have to take on.
Absolutely. I would make the trade in a heartbeat, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, he's got the stats.
That's what this podcast is all about. It's all of our opinions.
Exactly.
Boston Red Sox second baseman Dustin Pedroia is said to have suffered a, quote, significant setback with his left knee this offseason. Availability for spring training is in question. Apparently, Pedroia is said to be discussing options with family, agents, and the Red Sox. Now, Pedroia has played in 9 games since the end of the 2017 season. He injured his knee in April 2017. He played the entire season out, though. He's under contract through the 2021 season. Now, it sucks because I love Dustin Pedroia as a Red Sox fan. He is kind of the Red Sox heart and soul. I mean, I would say he definitely is. He plays the game like you want the Red Sox to play the game. But at this point, it really does seem like it's probably the curtain's probably closed on his playing career. But you know what? The Boston Red Sox are looking for a manager, and you know what? Why not?
Hey, you know what? I mean, that would be he's been with the team. It would be a good transition for him. You know, I feel like at this point, his career as a player, I think you're right, is probably coming to an end.
He just, unfortunately, his knee is not good.
No.
He had a cadaver ACL put in his knee after the 2017 season. And
which is bananas, by the way.
He said he would never get the surgery done again. He's trying to save his knee as much as he possibly can because he's probably going to need it replaced at some point in time. But for right now, he's certainly tried to do as much as he possibly could to extend his career, and it looks like that just isn't working for him.
Right, which is too bad.
And it's a bummer because he was on a Hall of Fame pace before he got injured, for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, moving over to the world of hockey real quick. Vegas Golden Knights, they fired their coach Gerard Gallant after losing 4 straight games late last week. Gallant was 118, 75, and 20 with 213 games with a Western Conference championship in the 2017-18 season. Peter DeBoer was named the new head coach. He was fired after 33 games with the Sharks this season. They went 15, 16, and 2 under his leadership. Now, Peter DeBoer coached the Devils to the Stanley Cup final in 2011-2012 and coached the Sharks to the Stanley Cup final in 2015-2016. So we'll certainly see how Vegas responds to that. They're not a bad team. They've just been kind of unlucky. And it looks like they felt a leadership change at the top would certainly help things out. So, again, we'll see how that works out for them.
All right, so let me get this right. So the Vegas Golden Knights, under this guy, were 118, 75, and 20.
Correct.
They lost. Didn't they make the Stanley Cup finals?
2017, 2018, correct. Yeah, they were in the final the first
right.
season.
That's what so like he took them to the Stanley Cup finals. He's got an outstanding record.
You got to remember, it's the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I know they didn't win.
No, I'm saying that's it's not finals, it's final. The hockey fans will beat you down.
Yeah, my bad. The Stanley Cup final.
Thank you. Get it right, goddammit.
For real. So he loses 4 straight games, which, by the way, sometimes happens when you're a coach in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, okay, bye.
My thought process behind it is that they were just looking for a spark, and that seemed to be their way to do it.
So they turned around and hired a dude who was fired after 33 games this season with a losing record.
I mean, it worked well. I think with San Jose, they had a lot of older players, but definitely his message probably got a little stale. Like I said, I'm sure that, having Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau and not having great goaltending also, that really that really doesn't help either.
True,
But
true.
he's not a bad coach. I just don't think that getting rid of Gerard Gallant was the right move. And also, this is the second time in his career he's been fired under terrible circumstances. You remember the last time he was fired by the Florida Panthers? They literally just kicked him out and said, go find a taxi and go to the airport and go home. So it's just not working out for him very well.
Yeah, that's a shame because, that's ridiculous to me.
Now, last weekend in the UFC, Conor McGregor returns and defeats Donald Cowboy Cerrone, I should say, via TKO in 40 seconds, Lewis. McGregor becomes the first fighter in UFC history with a knockout victory at featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight. Now, multiple fights have been rumored since, including McGregor-Mayweather 2, but UFC President Dana White said post-fight, quote, "We are looking at Hagler-Hearns, Ali Frazier. This is a massive fight with global appeal. This is the fight you make. It's the fight that makes sense. Khabib is the fight to make. It's huge for Khabib's legacy too." What do you think?
First of all, there was a lot of hype going into this fight with McGregor and Cerrone. I thought it was going to be a little more vicious of a fight. However, you can't defend the kick like that sometimes.
It's not even, it's not even the kick. It's what happened when McGregor went for the kill shot right off the cut, which that happens. Fighters do that sometimes. They see something, they study tape. They go, okay, this guy's always does X or Y or Z. So I'm going to go for this one thing. He went for it. Okay. And it didn't work. So they get in the clinch. And then that's when McGregor breaks out a move that even Cerrone himself, the UFC all-time leader in wins, said, I've never seen it happen before, what McGregor did. He dropped a level with his shoulder and kind of gave like a shoulder uppercut to Cerrone's face 3 or 4 times, breaking Cerrone's nose. So at that point, when they took a step back, you could see Cerrone was a little stunned because his nose just got broken. And that's when McGregor unleashed a kick to the face, which then knocked him down. And then McGregor went and finished the knockout in less than a minute. That was the one thing, like I said, that was the most impressive thing, because it's always, that's for me, I know fighting it's a fight. But
you know what?
If you look at it from a sport perspective,
right,
he brings a whole different angle to the game. And when he does stuff like that, he's on, and he was definitely on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I know that he was hitting him with the shoulders. I didn't realize that he had broken his nose with the shoulder. That's crazy. So that just shows how well-rounded Conor McGregor is. He brought something completely new. And then, that kick was just sick, and that staggered him. So when he went in for the kill shot after that, I was like, yeah, that was quick and nasty. So honestly, I understand that Khabib is a fight that they want to make. And frankly, I'm sure Conor wants it too. I know Khabib probably does. But I'm thinking maybe another tune-up fight, something before that. Khabib, his father made it clear that if the pay isn't right, then it's not going to happen. So they want a big payday.
Well, for sure. And there have been talks of Khabib facing Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match.
That would be interesting, because I think Khabib will get tore up in a boxing match against Mayweather. We saw it with McGregor. McGregor held his own for quite some time, but he wasn't used to the fighting style. And then when Mayweather, who I can't stand, was like, all right, I'm going to finish it, Mayweather finished it. So, I would like to see a McGregor-Mayweather too. You know what I would really like to see? I'd really like to see Mr. Mayweather, who talks a lot of junk, step into the octagon and get absolutely destroyed. Like he would get, 40 seconds to get down on Cerrone. I don't even know if Mayweather would last 40 seconds in the octagon. McGregor would break him in half. It'd be so good. But I mean, McGregor, Khabib too. I think that'll be a great fight.
I think so too. I mean, I'm down for Khabib McGregor. I think it'd be good. Yeah, and it would sell for sure. I mean, whatever McGregor does, it's gonna make money for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing McGregor's persona. This fight was completely different than what we're used to. He was respectful. He was nice. I was kind of surprised. It was a nice change. I was kind of surprised.
He's very calm, cool, collected. He didn't have his foot in his mouth. He was
right. And he wasn't like that against Khabib the first time.
Correct.
So I think if this is a new Conor McGregor who's bringing new stuff to the game, who has his mental properly attuned at this point, that what happened last time against Khabib won't be the same outcome.
Absolutely. I would hope that he would be able to beat Khabib and set up that trilogy fight that appears that the UFC really wants to do with Nate Diaz. Maybe they can get 3 out of Khabib and McGregor and just get the license to print money on that one.
Absolutely.
Moving over to the NFL, Carolina Panthers linebacker Luke Kuechly retires from the National Football League, says, quote, "In my heart, I know it's the right thing to do." Now, Kuechly, in 118 games, he had 1,092 tackles, 75 tackles for loss, 66 passes defended, 31 quarterback hits, 18 interceptions, 12.5 sacks, 9 fumble recoveries, 7 forced fumbles, and 2 touchdowns. He's one of 2 players to win Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in consecutive seasons. He was selected to 7 Pro Bowls, a 7-time All-Pro, a first-team All-Pro. His numbers comparable to former San Francisco linebacker Patrick Willis, who is widely regarded as a future Hall of Famer. Of linebackers who have played 8 seasons or less, Kuechly's approximate value per Pro Football Reference is 107, tied second with Patrick Willis. Only Seattle linebacker Bobby Wagner at 113 is higher. Lewis, is Luke Kuechly a Hall of Famer?
I would say just with his stats and the numbers that we see, I believe he has a chance to get in. I believe he might be. I would have liked to see him, with a ring, but with his stats, yeah, it's very possible that he's a Hall of Famer.
I mean, I think with Patrick Willis, with those numbers being the same, and Patrick Willis likely to end up in the Hall of Fame,
right,
that's definitely going to help Luke Kuechly. I mean, it's one of the situations where, yeah, they may have only played 8 years, but what they did in those 8 years.
Right,
and
exactly.
He was definitely on a Hall of Fame pace. You can't really hold it against him if he retires after 8 years. You put the players, the best players, in the Hall of Fame for what they did. If it was only 8 seasons, he was the best linebacker for those 8 years. Put him in the Hall.
I think he deserves to be a Hall of Famer over Eli Manning.
I like how you brought it back. Hey, speaking of retiring, what about a guy who's not going to retire? Arizona Cardinals.
Be in the Hall of Fame.
He should just active Hall of Famer, right? Arizona wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald announces he will return for a 17th season. Second all time in receiving yards was 17,083. Second all time in receptions was 1,378. Sixth all time in receiving touchdowns with 120. He ranks 12th all time in touchdowns scored. So again, 6th all time in receiving touchdowns, but out of all the players who ever played football, 12th most touchdowns scored.
And does he have a ring?
No.
See, I feel bad for
that one year they lost to the Steelers because of San Antonio Holmes.
That's right. That's
a blast from the past.
No doubt. See, I feel bad for players like Larry Fitzgerald because he's been a classy football player. He's never really gotten in trouble. He's got incredible stats. I feel bad for people like him who don't have a ring.
As we're talking about this, Sam Monson at PFF_Sam, writes for Pro Football Focus, points out, does 2 incredible individual postseason runs that culminated in the Super Bowl rings make the Hall of Fame with nothing else backing it up? That's effectively the Eli Manning argument.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I don't disagree.
I don't disagree either.
Hey, speaking of the Hall of Fame, that brings us to our second of the three big things. I know that first of the three big things was pretty long, but we'll make this one a little shorter here. The Baseball Hall of Fame made their announcement on Tuesday night. 397 votes cast, the fewest in any election since 1985. Let's see here. The inductees needed 298 votes. No surprise. Shortstop Derek Jeter was inducted. He had 396 votes. And outfielder Larry Walker is a Hall of Famer after receiving 304 votes in his final year of eligibility. Now, Lewis, let me just say this. Derek Jeter, whoever didn't vote for Derek Jeter, what a slap dick move that was.
All right, listen. When I saw what happened and who got inducted into the Hall of Fame, I had two questions. My first question was, who the bloody blue hell is Larry Walker?
Bro, you grew up. You were an adult during that era. How do you not know who Larry Walker is?
I looked him up and then I remembered who he was. But at first I was like,
one of the greatest Canadian power hitters of all time.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of great Canadian power hitters.
So not to mention, did you see that badass SpongeBob SquarePants t-shirt he was wearing on TV?
Yeah, it was quite funny. It was quite humorous. But I was like, who? And then when I saw that Derek Jeter, one person didn't vote for him, my second question was, where does this person live? So I can go slap the guy.
Like I said, only way to explain it, and this is coming from the mouth of a Red Sox
Boston
fan.
Writer.
Slap dick.
Yeah, ridiculous. How do you not
I don't know how else to explain
Jeter?
it. But that's another thing. That's another thing of mine, a pet peeve that's really bugs the crap out of me is, if Jeter's a Hall of Famer in the first year, but Walker's a Hall of Famer in the 10th year, what's the difference, really? If they're eligible, you should be able to say yes or no. That's it. It shouldn't have to take 10 years or whatever. You should be able to say, Derek Jeter's eligible, yes or no. Right. Larry Walker's eligible. Is he a Hall of Famer or no?
I think it's
play the politics of all that crap. Because Larry Walker, don't get me wrong, I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but he gained like 50% in the last 3 years because there was so much of a backlog of players that he wasn't able to get votes. Votes were extra votes that he could have gotten that he ended up getting were being siphoned off to other players.
Which is ridiculous.
I think it's I don't know. I guess I'm indifferent here, but I do want to discuss here who missed out. Curt Schilling.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this.
20 votes shy. He hit 70%. He gained 9.1% this last season. There's almost no doubt here that Curt Schilling will be an inductee in 2021. What else? Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, 56 and 57 votes shy, respectively. Roger Clemens hit 61%, Barry Bonds at 60.7%. Bonds gained 1.6%, Clemens gained 1.5%. Those two, here's the thing, and I'll talk about it in a second, but they continue to minuscule gains, small, tiny little gains. A big gainer, 3 big gainers actually that we're going to mention that we're going to keep eyes on in the next upcoming election. Shortstop Omar Vizquel, 91 votes shy. He hit 52.6%, a 9.8% gain. Third baseman Scott Rowland, 158 votes shy, 35.3% only, but he gained 18.1% in the season, in an election, I should say, election cycle. And then pitcher Billy Wagner, 172 votes shy, only 31.7% of the votes, but again, 15% increase. So, looking back at Curt Schilling, first off, per Fangraphs, of 21 players, Lewis, who have received at least 70% of the votes and were not in their final year of eligibility, only one of those players failed to be inducted the next season. That was Jim Bunning in 1988. Also, to speak to Clemens, Bonds, and Vizquel, excluding current candidates who are eligible, that being Vizquel, Bonds, and Clemens, only one player, Gil Hodges, has received at least 50% of the vote in a specific election cycle and has not gained eventual entry into the Hall of Fame from either the writers or the committee afterwards. So definitely a positive, I would say, a positive sign for not only Clemens and Bonds, but Vizquel himself. I don't know if we see Clemens and Bonds go in. We've talked about this, I believe, ad nauseum at this point. But, Lewis, the big reason I mentioned this about Clemens and Bonds, they're at 61 and 60.7% Clemens and Bonds, respectively, as mentioned. But 2021 is not a very, very deep class. You've got the big three of this: Tim Hudson, pitcher Mark Burley, and outfielder Torrey Hunter. All three very good players, I believe, to be in the Hall of Very Good, but not the Hall of Fame. It's an opportunity to clear out a logjam in 2021 for Schilling, Clemens, Bonds, potentially. They're all three of them are hitting their 9th year of eligibility. And those vote totals for Clemens and Bonds will be very telling. Because if they, in a year where there are no clear-cut first-year eligible players, and then all of a sudden you've got these guys, there's all these votes out there. Will people say, you know what, we're not going to do it, we're just going to wait till potentially the 10th year, or just never going to vote for them? Or will they say, you know what, now's the time, let's do it?
You know, when it comes to players like Bonds and Clemens, if they get in, that will give hope to other players who are kind of tied to that steroid era.
Those players that never failed a test.
Yeah, like the players that never failed.
Like Gary Sheffield, who gained a ton of votes this season.
Right. Like Gary Sheffield, the crime dog, he should be in. Looking at the list that you provided, I don't know about Billy Wagner. You know, he was 47 and 40.
Again, he was one of the best of his time, Hall of Very Good, I think, but he's gaining support, and that's all that matters.
You know, Omar Vizquel, maybe he was a great
because
shortstop.
because the hits, the longevity, and his versatility will probably end up getting him in.
I don't think there's any question that Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. No doubt.
Even if you put an asterisk next to it, I don't care. I didn't like the guy.
We've talked about this before. No asterisks needed. All you have to do is educate.
Put him in.
Put him in and educate.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's not hard to say, hey, look at he never failed the drug test, but there was suspicion. But then again, if you have no evidence, it's like a murder. You can't put someone in jail.
Right.
Well, I think he did it. Do you have any proof? No. Okay, well then see you later.
And I feel the same way about Roger Clemens.
I think that both players definitely exhibited signs of a late career resurgence that most may not see. Like Roger Clemens appeared to be done after his time in Boston, goes to Toronto, 2 incredible seasons, wins the Cy Young, and then goes to New York and is insane, lights out, and pitches till he's like 75. So again, I think if they don't get a big bump, at least to like 70%, if they don't get to the door to knock on it in year 9, I can't believe that year 10 they would get in. I think that year 10 might be the year that they get in. They may get their own season. They may have to wait out. That's what we've mentioned for years, Lewis. I feel like we've had this conversation a ton of times where we said, you know what? They'll probably wait until the last minute and barely let them in, but they'll let them in. Because if not, it becomes such a black eye for baseball, I think. It's kind of like with Pete Rose being out or the Black Sox being out. Although they actually did something wrong and were busted doing something wrong.
Exactly.
But Bonds and Clemens never were. Now, this is going to come up. This is going to create an interesting argument in a few years here, because you've got David Ortiz and you've got Alex Rodriguez on the ballot in the same year. Alex Rodriguez failed multiple drug tests and admitted to using steroids.
Absolutely.
David Ortiz showed up on the Mitchell report, which was not supposed to be released, and has since been I'm trying to think of the word. I can't. It's essentially been scraped off his record by Rob Manfred since then. Rob Manfred said, no, that's irrelevant. That essentially doesn't count. He never failed the drug test, all that stuff. So Ortiz is clear, but someone's going to say, I didn't vote for him because I think he took steroids.
Right. And Ortiz
so again, you can't, it's one of those situations where you can't play God.
Right.
You go based off what you know. Like Jeff Kent, for instance. I think Jeff Kent probably should be in the Hall of Fame. But here's the thing, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before. He was a gigantic prick to all of the media members. So he's suffering. Again, you can't play God. I don't think it's necessarily fair that that you're going to hold a guy out because he was a dickhead. But I get whatever, I guess. If that's the hill you want to die on, fucking pitch a tent and have a day.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
I just get so annoyed by it because, again, you should make a Hall of Fame this goddamn difficult, but they seem to want to make it so impossible for the best players to get in. Now, granted, there were a lot of very good players that fell off the ballot this year in their first year that, again, Hall of Very Good or Hall of I enjoyed watching. Paul Konerko, Jason Giambi, Alfonso Soriano, Eric Chavez, Cliff Lee, Raul Ibanez, JJ Putz, Brad Penny, Adam Dunn, Carlos Pena, Heath Bell, Rafael Furcal, Brian Roberts, Jose Valverde, Sean Figgins, and Josh Beckett. They all had their first year on the ballot. They all didn't get enough votes. I mean, I know, Lewis, we enjoyed watching those guys play baseball for whomever it may have been, whoever it was, whoever it may have been, wherever they may have played. We enjoyed it. But again, you're taking players who changed the game, who made an impact, who transcended the game. And Barry Bonds did that. Roger Clemens did that. I would say, even though Omar Vizquel isn't a sexy Derek Jeter type player, he survived. He left the game better than he found it, essentially. And that's why I think he'll end up. Scott Rowland, he may not have been the greatest third baseman, but he was one of the best, if not the best third baseman of his time. You put those players in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, essentially. I agree with you. We'll see what happens going forward. Like the falling off the ballot list that you just read, there's a couple people on there that I believe should be in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, there are some players who have fallen off the ballot, who went to the Veterans Committee or whatever it is and never got in. Again, I feel like I don't know, man. I get too wrapped up in this. It's irrelevant, but it's relevant, but then again, it's irrelevant. So it's one of those things where how much time do you want to spend and discuss here and get mad about a Hall of Fame?
Yeah, no, I agree. We could go on and on about it.
Moving over to football. I was going to say, moving over. I took a breath there. Moving over to football now. Third of the three big things here, because our podcast is running a little long here. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention here real quick. Las Vegas today officially gained the Raiders. The Raiders changed their name to the Las Vegas Raiders on Wednesday, January 22nd. They're now officially Las Vegas Raiders. That being said, Conference Championship Weekend is something the Raiders have not seen in a very long time. The Conference Championship Weekend rewind. First off, we start Kansas City defeating Tennessee 35-24. Don't know why I said it that way, but guess what? I can't take it back. Future Hall of Famer, Kansas City quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Incredible. 23 of 35, 294 yards. 3 touchdowns. Wow, that was close. I almost just threw up. 8 carries for 53 yards and 1 touchdown. So, with that being said, wow, what a game from Patrick Mahomes. First off, offensively, he was incredible. Seemed to have Tennessee's number. I mean, Tennessee started off hot, and then Kansas City came back and did the same thing they did against Houston in a smaller form.
Yeah, wasn't Tennessee up like 21-0 at one point?
It was a lot to a little. That's all I remember. I can't remember the exact number here, but it was impressive.
It was. That's why I think Kansas City might win the Super Bowl.
And we'll talk about that next week. Right now, we're talking about the conference championship. Don't spoil it, damn it. Kansas City's defense held Derrick Henry, all-world running back Derrick Henry, to 69 yards, nice, and 1 touchdown on 19 carries. Henry was held to only 7 yards on 4 carries in the second half. Not sure why Tennessee abandoned him, but hey, you know what? To each his own. Whatever you decide to do, you decide to do. That's you made your bed, you lay in it. Tennessee had one hell of a run, but Kansas City was a buzzsaw, and Kansas City did exactly what they needed to do, and they will represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
It was almost like Kansas City was like, we're going to spot you a quarter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they spotted them a quarter, and then they were like, okay, you had your fun. Now it's our turn.
Now moving over to the NFC, San Francisco handled Green Bay 37-20. Game was not as close as it seemed.
No.
San Francisco running back Raheem Mostert, 29 carries, 220 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's the only player in NFL history with 200-plus rushing yards and 4-plus rushing touchdowns in a playoff game. Jimmy Garoppolo, 6 of 8 passing, only 77 yards. Lewis, Garoppolo did not need to pass the ball with how much trouble Green Bay's defense had stopping the run. And again, San Francisco won by 17, but that's because San Francisco dominated in all aspects on Sunday night. The game was not as close as the score might indicate, as I mentioned. It was 34-7 late in the third quarter. San Francisco put it in cruise control and said, have it. Have your way. Score your touchdowns. We're going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they knew that there was no way Green Bay was going to come back from that deficit. And they did. They put it on cruise control for a little bit. And, well.
One might say, Lewis, they waxed that ass.
Yeah, pretty much.
So now, looking ahead, we're not going to talk about the Super Bowl too much because the podcast has gone a little long. It's okay. Who cares? But I also want to be able to have a full podcast about the big game. Instead of jamming a full podcast and a 5-minute preview, we're going to come back next week. We're going to have a full podcast dedicated to a Super Bowl preview.
Sounds good.
Isn't it crazy, too, that you can't say Super Bowl on the air like all the radio stations say, coming up this Sunday, the big game. And you're like, what the fuck they call it the big game for? But I read on the internet, I got the story here. Per the Motley Fool quote, the NFL sent a cease and desist order letter to an Indiana church group that used the name to promote its party with an intent to charge admission. They are nuts about this. They want to protect their game. They want to protect their name, their crown jewel, the Super Bowl, or as Stephen Colbert called it, the superb owl. Remember that from a couple years ago?
Yeah. Anyways, personally, I think the NFL takes it a little too far with it.
They probably do, but when do they not take it too far? I feel like the only time they don't take it too far is when someone beats up their wife or girlfriend or their children. Then they're like, we're gonna take this one. We're gonna sit this one out.
Right, pretty much. That's kind of how that went for a little bit.
Yikes. Well, hey, with that being said, Kansas City, San Francisco in the Super Bowl. Myself and Lewis will be back next week to talk about it. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD. Lewis is at MRLG Perez on Twitter. We are better live than dead.
You're not.
We will catch you sometime very soon. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.